Welcome to Cognitive Rampage podcast. Hope you're taking care of you. Hope you're living your cognitive rampage in 2017. We're going to get to talking about all the 2017 stuff that people are doing, but a couple things to tell you about. First, the new edition, the second edition of the Cognitive Rampage will be out in January. I was aiming for January 10th or 11th because that's when Dr. Gabor Mate will be on the podcast. But we're not going to make that date. It will be in January. I just don't know when exactly right now. So I want to update you. That book's coming out. The audio book will also be out in January. I do read that. I throw a bunch of ad libs in. I go off on left squirrel tangents. It kind of sounds like a podcast sometimes, but it'll be a little different. 2, Dollar Mental Health Club is coming back. Dollar Mental Health Club, changing the paradigm. Again, it's not going to be our slogan, but for the podcast, it is fuck insurance companies. Trying to find a way to bring real mental health help to people that's affordable, that's easy on your time. You don't have to drive anywhere, waiting rooms, co-pays, insurance, maze, none of that bullshit. But anyway, changing the paradigm of mental health with Dollar Mental Health Club. We're going to launch that in February. If you're interested in being a mental trainer with Dollar Mental Health Club, please email your resume to dollarmentalhealthclub@gmail.com. You just email it. It's not about being licensed. Just email it. We'll reach out to you as well. And Drink My Coty, Alfred, thank you for the concentrate. Holy shit. Anyway, go to drinkmycoty.com, Nectar of the Gods, probiotic. I drink it because I love the probiotic, but I also love the clean water. pH is like 2.5 or some shit. It's clean. It's beautiful. Go to Drink My Coty. Thanks, Alfred. Love it. Holy shit, Naudi motherfucking Aguilar. My boy, back on the podcast. Been a while, baby. They've been trying to kill us for a little bit on the podcast. Last time I was talking like a chipmunk and we had to shut it down. This time, I don't know what was screwing up. We finally back at it, man. What the fuck is up with you, brother? How are you, man?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. Just chilling here in my facilities. I guess this is maybe the first or second time I shot here to my facility. But yeah, I'm just here chilling with my dogs, literally. Got my little Fresco, my little Bernie over here. And yeah, I'm just kicking back, bro. Just trying to take it easy after the holidays. Getting ready to get back on the grind and everything, man. But yeah, things are good. Life is good, man. Can't complain.
Yeah, man, I love it. You've been showing the little dog, man. Let me see Fresco, man. Hold on, let me see him.
Fresco, come here, Popeye. Come here, Fresco. Come here. Come here. Oh, yeah, just little Fresco.
Your camera's tripping out, man. Your camera's tripping out anyway. Yeah, your camera's tripping out. I can't
Okay, can you see me now? Or?
I don't know. Fuck technology.
Okay, oh, yeah. Man.
Cute little damn dog. So what the fuck is new, bro? What is new with FP, bro? I'm watching you. You're back on that attack. Hold on. I learned something about you too, brother. You kind of have this little cycle that you go through, and like a poker player, I'm starting to learn you a little bit. When you start coming out hardcore on some motherfuckers, you're doing that because you got some fucking knowledge up your sleeve. You learned something. You learn something, but you hold that shit for a long time, and then you go at people and you wait. Am I right?
Well, bro, I have a laboratory, so.
Well, you got something pivotal. I think you pocketed something, and now you're going, what's this shit?
Exactly. That's pretty much what it is. I'm in a lab, and it's like people are making assertions about exercise and how much it benefits people. Then I put them on my treadmill, and I make them go through movements, and I see how they are not connecting things that they're supposed to be connecting, and what influences those specific movements that they do are pretty much what those specific movements are doing to impair these specific functions that they need with their body. And my latest one is yoga. Although I've already known about yoga for quite some time. Look, it works this way, Adam. I've looked at training systems around me, and I've kind of been like, you know what? I could tell that there's something wrong here with these training modalities. Certain what it is, and then when I finally see it presented to me based upon how I'm like the other day we went to a spot out near Portland, and I just bought a motion capture system. So it cost me a pretty penny, but I'm going to start doing motion capture. And so we started looking at the motion capture. We got on a force plate, and the data reveals some things to me that I wasn't even accounting for fully. But with regard to what other people are doing, they're not even close to being able to account for. So when I start looking at these things and I look at the data, I can't help but look at the data and then look at the things that are around me. And so much of this too, Adam, it's me analyzing the data, seeing the damage that these certain training modalities are doing, but then even beyond that, it's looking at the culture. I go to this place. It's a spa out here in Seattle. I do it maybe about three times a week, maybe 4 times a week. And you hear people talking, which annoys the hell out of me. You go to a spa and you still hear people just jabbering on about the same story over and over again, which I won't get into, but you hear them jabbering on about how they're doing yoga and how they love doing it, and everybody's like, oh yeah, yoga this. And you look at their bodies and they take every step that they take while they're in this place, they're having to like crawl up the sauna and everything like that. You see them just kind of like just lumbering around in such an inefficient manner, and you can't help but just think, these people don't realize what they're doing to themselves, and there's an alternative to this madness. They have no idea, because there's even a yogi there's massage therapists, everybody's talking about hip replacement surgeries that they're having to go through, shoulder surgeries. I take people that are in FP with me, and they can't help but just be annoyed by the actual talks that people have, because almost half the time it relates to some kind of surgery that they have after they've been doing yoga, because Seattle's a very progressive community and yoga is all over the place over here. CrossFit is pretty big, but yoga is huge. And you just see how what the cultural climate is around here. Every gung-ho about yoga, yet everybody's getting surgery, and I'm like, the inability for people to put two and two together and say, well, you know what, it might be my yoga it could potentially be that's creating these problems. It's astounding to me how they don't figure it out.
Sorry to slow you down, brother. I'm only going to speak from my own experience here. I'm no fucking yogi master. I'm none of that shit. I've stretched my whole life. I've actually been pretty proud of the fact, right? Even when I was an athlete, man, it's oddly flexible. So anyway, I did a little biohacking, man, because you started talking about the yoga and the stretching for a while now. You have been, right? And about how the stretching. I love when you do your little fucking thing with the finger. It explains it so much. When you take the muscle beyond and then in here, I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
that's how I use it to explain it. But my own experience is this, man. No matter how big I was, even when I was like diesel 245, I stayed flexible, and I was kind of proud of that. But I always had this lower back twinge that was pretty shitty. And it was pretty shitty. And so I equated it to squatting, years of football, 4 total car wrecks, right? I had a million rationalizations. And I won't cover all the facts. Essentially, I just quit doing that. By the way, you're re-mentioned twice in the second edition of the Cognitive Rampage is coming out. I specifically rewrote the exercise section and changed the title of that chapter to movement, and
Beautiful.
No longer use the word exercise. And anyway, left field.
Beautiful.
But anyway, my point is I always equated it to the lifting, the heavy, pressure I would always be putting on my back. Well, then this time I've just come back. I've already lost all the weight. Been years. So I've been back, kickbox training, Muay Thai, doing what I do all the time. Well, I got back into it really hard the last couple months. And so what I decided to do early was throw my stretching routine back in at the end, and sometimes at the beginning. Well, guess what the fuck showed back up? That fucking lower back fucking twinge I blamed on everything else. And I thought, no fucking way. Then you start talking all this yoga shit. And I'm going, motherfucker, what did he fucking discover? You know what I mean? And then I quit then. So I quit my stretching routine. 2 or 3 weeks, the fucking twinge was gone, bro.
Adam, I tell people, and I understand where people are coming from, Adam. They look at me and they're not seeing what I'm seeing. So much of what I say to them is like, you're crazy, but they don't understand that I'm extrapolating. I'm looking at data and I'm making judgments based upon that. But yeah, I'm looking at the data and I'm informing people of the risks that come with these specific activities. I do this because I care. I don't go about calling these systems out. Look, if the systems would have worked for me when I did them, I just put up a picture on Instagram this morning of me doing yoga. I did yoga about 7-8 years ago.
So you're not saying there's absolutely no benefit to this shit at all, right? You're just saying the benefit.
No, what I'm saying is that there's after about a month or 2 months, it's not talking about benefit. We're talking about long-term damage after the first month. Look, Adam, you have fascial adhesions, right? So let's say you have a fascial adhesion. Let's say the first time that you stretch that fascial adhesion, you might see benefit. But the problem is when you continue to keep stretching after the adhesions are gone now, and you hold these poses for 30 seconds to a minute, what you're essentially doing is you're telling the muscle to stop bouncing. bounce. When a muscle goes into a
Holy
resting
shit.
position,
Well, isn't that what they tell
then
you to in stretching? No bouncing or nothing, right? Holy shit. Dude, you got to
bro,
fix your
there's
camera, man, because you're going to start doing stuff with your fingers and showing stuff. Like, try to turn it off or
uh,
back on again.
okay, let me try turn it off. Okay, can you see me? I just turned it back on now. Can you see me at all or no?
No.
Son of a bitch. Let me try it one more
Oh
time.
well, because I was going to tell you to kind of do that finger thing that you talk about, man. It's so simplistic, and visuals really help a lot of
Just
people and how you talk about.
I'll describe it even without me being on the camera. Hopefully it'll get fixed. But
All right,
if you
you
guys
ready?
could
Here,
just
I'll be the flight attendant. You have exits in the back and in the rear. All
just,
right.
just imagine like let's say if I had a kettlebell attached to a resistance band and it was bouncing down and up in a rhythmic fashion, that it's like it's your muscles are a symphony of that kind of motion when you're running or when you're walking or when you're doing any types of movement. When you do yoga, imagine that you're taking a really heavy kettlebell that's stretching all the way down to the floor and it's stuck that way, and then within time you hold it like that for several hours a day, and imagine that kettlebell hanging there for about 5 years. Eventually the elasticity of that band is going to disappear and there's going to be no return, and there's going to be no storage of energy and return of energy that's happening with that band going up towards the ceiling. There will be no more bounce. That's essentially what yoga does to a body. So when I begin to look at yogis, I'm looking at bodies that are deteriorating. They're slowly deteriorating, and like I've looked at this as people get older. They're like even on cadavers, you can see how the tissues begin to essentially disappear because there's no actual stimulation going to the musculature. So when you think of something like yoga and they're telling you to hold and stretch for a particular, like for an extended period of time, what they're communicating is that we should disengage muscles, we should disengage fascial structures, and the implications of that are very great, and the problems associated with that kind of stimulation on the body are, I mean, it's really bad. It's what I'm seeing right now in terms of people and their function and their bodies is that they're doing so much unnecessary surgery that doesn't need to happen. When I bring them into the gym and they're incapable of connecting their core or their posterior chain or even their anterior chain, or the second I connect it for about when I connect it for about a half a second and their body begins to tremble and shake and they almost want to scream, the tension is so much because they've never connected it. That's where it's essentially being presented to me that yoga and these training modalities that exist in the industry are absolutely destructive. So after, let's say you do yoga for about a month, that's going to be okay. But anytime you extend what you're doing in yoga for about a month, usually you're going to be talking about the damaging effects. I would much rather train a bodybuilder than I would a yogi. Bodybuilding has much more functionality because you're creating muscle tonicity, which is, it's easier to stretch a hypertonic muscle than it is to contract a lengthened muscle that's switched off from the brain. It's much easier to connect hypertonicity and then lengthen it than it is to create inactive elasticity. I'm trying to find where, I know there's words for this. I just don't know what it is because I don't read the books as much. But it's when a muscle switches off and I have to turn it back on that it becomes much more problematic with the human body. So I'd rather, for me, in terms of, the funny part is as I go deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole, I'm finding that my assertions are leading me to bodybuilding being the most functional type of exercise that you can do in training. Well-intentioned bodybuilding where people are doing slow kinds of connections through the bodybuilding. Now, how bodybuilders go about it is clearly wrong, but there's a way of building the body in a particular fashion that respects tensegrity. And if you told me the best activity that you can have, based upon the types of people that I've trained, it would be bodybuilding. If you were to tell me that a runner came into the gym, a runner would be terrible to train. If you were to tell me to bring in a yogi, an Olympic lifter, or a power lifter, those people are terrible to train. If you bring in a bodybuilder, they know how to connect muscles because they fatigue tissues, and all you have to do is just wire that same intuition in a different fashion. And but the crazy part is that the bodybuilder would be the person that would probably listen to me the least. Even the I guess the Olympic lifters, power lifters, and yogis don't really listen to me anyway. So it's just, or I guess they listen, but they only try what I do after they've injured themselves. But the point being here that what I'm seeing out of yoga is that, you know, it's switching muscles off. and that the benefit of yoga can only happen at a certain level. They're cueing belly breathing, which belly breathing can be cued, but very little that comes of benefit with yoga. I mean, there's very little benefit that comes from anything in our culture, from what I'm finding. Our culture is a farce. So how can you, if our culture is fraudulent, how can you expect anything that is built from our culture to not be fraudulent? You see what I'm saying? You can't have relevance out of come from a fraudulent culture. And it's not to say that I'm not a fraudulent person, but I've at least tried to not be fraudulent, and that's the reason that I'm able to produce the results that I am, because I've acknowledged that I came from a fraudulent culture and that I myself was fraudulent as a human being, and that I needed to not become a fraud in order to bring about relevant information. And that's why I'm coming to these realizations that pretty much everything that we've been fed in our culture is a lie, and the same thing goes with our training modalities, just like it goes with pharmaceutical prescriptions, just like it goes with antidepressant medication. All of these things come along for the ride, and clearly yoga is another societal invention created fraudulent people who adapted to a fraudulent society.
Yeah, when you get beyond, I mean, I try to, for myself, stay this domino effect logical thinker, and just simply the kettlebell and the rubber band. I mean, when I think about that explanation, it seems to make so much sense. And then my own experience. I mean, no one can tell me that my back didn't fucking feel like a 7 as soon as I started stretching. Then when I stopped, it went away. Now, I don't know all the variables. I'm not in the lab, but it makes so much sense. Now, what about, kind of mixing those two, if it's more of a variable, or is it the same effect? Is that you're basically, because we know that when you bodybuild, when you go into the gym, you destroy the muscle, you tear it down, and then you let it heal. And then, so if you mix the two, in my head now, I'm kind of coming to this idea that if I tear the muscle down, then the days that I'm letting it heal, I then stretch it with like a kettlebell all the fucking way. Does it get stronger? In my head, I'm seeing like it actually gets weaker over time.
Well, Adam, if you move perfectly, you don't need to stretch. You see what I'm saying? If your training takes you through the full eccentric stretching capacity of a muscle, and there's tension on it, and then you act on that eccentric and then make it a concentric into an activation, then it doesn't matter. Why would you need to stretch? I don't stretch. What I do is I engage neuromyofascial structures in certain contexts that relate to me being able to adapt to the environment better when I do jujitsu, when I go run, when I do anything, when I throw, whatever it may be, if I do a cartwheel, whatever it may be, if I do play touch butt and start rolling around, essentially, if I engage the tissues through the eccentric spectrum and I engage it all the way from my pinky toe all the way up to my pinky finger on my right hand, contralaterally to my left leg, then I shouldn't have to stretch anymore. Why do I need to stretch? If my muscle engagements are perfect, there's no necessity for stretching. Stretch, Adam. Yeah. What's the reason for stretching? You tell me.
Yeah, I love, I'm going to get to that because I was actually coaching a high school football team a couple of years ago. And I remember when it was just hitting that fitness industry field that stretching prior to activity was bad. And it took a long time for that cognitive dissonance to hit because all these old school coaches and trainers for years had always taught this stretching and da-da-da-da. And it finally kind of caught on a little bit where people stopped doing this massive stretching before a physical activity. And now it's kind of on that other back end where yoga is this stretching on steroids version and more consistent. I can see it hitting those cognitive dissonances of people, right? Of going, and then you ask the question, what is stretching for, right? I remember before they discovered, it's not good before activity was to warm up the muscle, engage it so you don't pull it or stretch it. And then you showed that same rubber band idea is if I do this to a rubber band before I use it for a couple hours, how effective is it going to be? Or is it more of effective if I just kind of warm it right and then use it? And all this caught on.
Absolutely.
But it's funny how people will forget that. They forget that time where people had to go, oh, shit, you don't have to do a 30-minute stretching routine before the game. You do a warm-up activity. Okay. Forget that happened. No, now he's fucked up. You stretch. Yoga is about stretching and engaging the mud, right? And still won't be enough to question that. Because let me ask you, what do they believe stretching is for?
Look, Adam, I can go into a million theories as to what I think they think stretching is for. I think it's just to create more length out of a muscle, so then maybe get more contractile function. If you're going to get the from the smartest people in the industry. They're thinking I stretch to then create contractile tension from that stretch position. That's what I would assume that they're making, but you can't communicate contractile tension by localizing a muscle. So if I think that there's a band of tissue that runs,
explain that for me. Go back. Explain what you
so
just kind of said
if
there.
if I stretch a muscle to a certain length, then at some point I'm going to tell the body to activate off of that stretch. Is Adam, if I only stretch my quadricep and I don't have that link to the anterior part of my foot and the anterior part of my shin, that's one muscle from my hip all the way down to the tops of my toes. That's one muscle. So the question is, how do you put tension? How do you stretch that entire segment of tissues in one stretch, and how do you create tension off of that? I may get this misconstrued, but I have physical therapists and functional patterns who've made me aware of this. But you have alpha and you have gamma signals. The gamma controls how far a muscle is going to stretch. The alpha is what tells you whether that muscle is actually going to move or not. And 1% of your muscle function is gamma, and 99% of your muscle function is alpha function. Well, guess what part of the function you're beginning to stimulate when you stretch? The 1%. So you're essentially trying to change structure through the 1% of what you do. So you see the somatic approaches where people are doing really slow motions and whatnot, when most of what actually influences your movement is alpha motor signals. And these alpha motor signals pretty much dictate how you're going to move. The gamma just tells you how far that motion's supposed to go, but the alpha is actually what dictates what's going on. So when you're doing stretching like yoga, all you're fucking with essentially is the gamma signals. You're not doing anything outside of those spectrums.
Holy dude, you're fucking with, wow. I'm like, you're talking, you can see in the video where it kind of hit me. You could probably make a video. You could make a video out of that with FP to where you're talking, they go the minute somebody gets it. And then I'm like, oh shit, you had not even finished. And all I could imagine is if our body was this like array of slingshots all sort of tied together.
Beautiful.
And I stretch one slingshot a little further just because that's my routine. And then the connection muscles to that not so far, and then I try to utilize that entire machine to function. No wonder motherfuckers are getting injured. No wonder they told you to stop stretching before you play a football game. What the fuck?
Bro, exactly, Adam. This is hard science. And it's not like, oh, we need to conduct scientific studies. The problem is with scientific studies is that the problem with the scientific study is that I think scientists already know this, and they're already employing a certain type of training modality that they know doesn't account for this.
You can't make new products. I mean,
No,
Gabor Mate says it.
No.
He says an addiction.
I can make products. Adam, I am going to make products out of this. We already have inventions in the making. No, you can, but it requires competence in order to do this, bro, and it requires self-honesty to tell you. At some point, you have to say, yeah, my yoga isn't doing much. My Olympic lifting and my bodybuilding and my functional training approaches don't do much to account for these problems. So what do I have to do? I have to abandon ship on what I've been doing, and I need to start from scratch. That's what it comes down to.
I definitely know. Hold on. I definitely know we got a little confused. What I was kind of saying is
totally.
It makes more industry. So the longer we can say the research is out, the more products, the more industries, the more fields, right? The more order for $19.95 for 6 month stuff. Gabor Mate's been saying it in addiction. He's saying stop the research for addiction mental health. It's fucking trauma. It's linked to this idea in our interaction with the world, and stop it. But if they stop the mental health research, there can be no more Betty Ford reverse type clinics or the supercharged cognitive whatever, the new type of therapy, that this all goes away. That's what I meant by new products. And so in fitness, if that happens, if the research stops, I'm a fitness dummy, and I was an athlete, okay?
No,
I was a lunk. My point is I'm logical. I was a lunkhead, believe all this, I'm in it. And then in 5 fucking minutes, I'm just sitting here going, wait, holy fuck. Wow.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fuck. It goes all the way back to your original podcast with me, man, years ago on number 69, where you talked about, if you're right, billions of dollars of industry go away.
Pretty much, man. That's it. It's our system is run on inefficiency. We work in a patchwork economy. So
Fuck
if,
you. Now I know why people say fuck you all the time.
of
I'm sitting
course,
here wanting to say fuck you because you're like, you punch at my cognitive dissonance about stretching and yoga, right? I was listening to you this week going, I don't know, man. I said, and then the lower back, I'm like, fuck. But no wonder, man. I did as a therapist, I used to sit there and tell him, look, if you don't tell me fuck you at least once a week, I'm not doing my job. You know what I mean? So
absolutely,
fuck you,
absolutely,
Naudi. Fuck.
absolutely.
Fuck.
No, but what it what it comes down to, man, is that again, I'm making calculations. I'm making predictions. That's all I'm doing. I'm a prophet, but I'm not a prophet because I'm just observing reality as we test it here in our laboratories. And this isn't just me coming to the conclusions. I talk to my colleagues all the time about this kind of stuff, and I'm not the one. I'm just the messenger, but there's many prophets involved in this. It's not just me. It's not Naudi who's the guru. I'm just the one that. You have to understand, Adam, most of the guys that are in functional patterns don't care about the limelight. They really don't care. Why do you think they don't make videos? They don't care. They don't care about fame or any of that kind of crap. For me, I've realized this is what I didn't want to be the spokesperson, and I was hoping somebody else would take over, but I realized I gave the spokesperson title to other people before, and it wound up turning into crap because they got to their head. But so many of the people that are in FP, they're making these discoveries as well. We're all arriving at these same conclusions. The only thing is, I'm the spokesperson to this because they're like, I don't want to deal with the public. I don't want to deal with the scrutiny. I don't want to deal with all that crap. So I'll let you just kind of communicate what's going on there. So many people want to shoot the messenger and make it out to be like, you know what, I love functional patterns, but I hate how Naudi does this. It's not Naudi. It's the entire functional patterns culture that's determining this based upon how we're looking at the variables. We are testing this. We are conducting science. And when I tell you that you're going to get hurt doing these things, it's only a matter of time. I'm right. That's simply it. If you keep doing Olympic lifting, powerlifting, lifting heavy, bodybuilding in the way that it's done, if you keep doing yoga in the way that it's done, injury at some point or the other, it's going to creep up. There is no ways around it, bro. And this is the problem with stretching, bro. The reason that people say that you need to stretch is because people have stationary jobs. When the body becomes stationary and the body has lost its capability of having elastic energy through its muscles, then guess what you have to do before you can even exercise it, so you don't tear something. It's when you sit down, you make your muscle static. Well, if you take a muscle that's wired to be static when you're sitting down and your body associates sitting to being static, then guess what happens if you go run? You tear something. So that's why you have to move around, create blood flow and all that to make sure that you don't tear something. But if you're like me, I'll get up off of the seated position that I'm in right now and I'll go for a sprint, and it's not going to bother me because, Adam, I don't associate to sitting. I associate to movement. My body is like that kettlebell that I'm talking about, swinging on a resistance band. That's how I function. That's the way my body moves. So I don't associate to sitting. Next 10, 15 hours and I could go out for a run, no problem, and not have to worry about tearing something. Now, if I did that repeatedly and I didn't work on making my body elastic, I'm gonna suffer from the same consequences that everybody else does. But the key point in what I'm stating right now is that I don't adapt to the sitting. Everybody else does. And when you do something like yoga and it's a static environment, and then you go sit in a desk, which is also a static, and there's some places where they do yoga flows, but the yoga flows that exist are nowhere near the explosive capabilities. The sequencing is not found in yoga that you find in Usain Bolt's running. The sequencing that we cover in functional patterns replicates almost to the T what Usain Bolt is doing. Why? Because I look at what Usain Bolt does and I copy him frame by frame, micrometer by micrometer. I look at exactly what this guy is doing and I replicate it, which is why FP gets the results it does. We're copying Usain Bolt. The flows that exist in yoga, even for the dynamic yogas, do not copy the flows that Usain Bolt's going through. If it did, yoga would have to be functional patterns. That's it. There's no ways around it. So of course, for people, they look at me because I attack their cognitive dissonance, but I'm doing it to help them. I'm not doing that to hinder them. Of course, this helps functional patterns as a business, but for many years, I shot myself in the foot doing what I'm doing. And you know what? It's about time that I myself and everybody at FP gets paid, so that way I can invest. You know how much an EMG machine costs? If I want to get the right EMG machine, Adam, you know how much money that costs? To $30,000. I have to make the money to invest in that kind of equipment. Guess how much a motion capture system costs? Legit, it cost me around $25,000 to $30,000. If I want to buy a good force plate, that if I want to buy enough force plates that determine what I need to do with the body, then guess what I have to do? I have to invest probably another $20,000, $30,000. These kind of tools, they require money. It requires money for me to be able to do this. I'm not a materialist. I don't spend money needlessly on crazy stuff. This is not the way that I function. Everything that I spend my money on is on my business, which is really oriented around the science of human movement. This is what I spend my money on. This is what I do. This is what I spend my money on. So the reality is, the less people buy into functional patterns, the harder it's going to be for me to invest in the tools that will help me quantify why all these systems are destroying people and why functional patterns actually does stand out above the rest. It costs money. You need resources. If people want me to conduct scientific research, then guess what I need for that? I need money. I need people to actually try what I'm doing.
Yeah, the scientist needs the beakers, man. You need your microscopes. You need your shit to do what you got to do, man. I mean,
Absolutely. And at some point, I may need microscopes to see, okay, if you have parasites in your body and the parasites are influencing your behavior, let's see if in some way or the other, I can hire a scientist that measures your dopamine, your serotonin on the spot. Functional patterns needs the resources. So if I don't go in here and cut down other training systems, then people look at them. If I tell people, look, doing deadlifts is great, and traditional therapies work and all that, people are like, okay, thank God, I don't have to reinvest more money. I don't have to spend more money on new things. All I have to do is just keep doing what I'm doing. When I tell you, yoga sucks and it doesn't work, and you own a yoga studio, you're thinking, okay, I have to reinvest my time, my money, all my resources have to be allocated to this new concept, and that's just too damn difficult. I can't go about that. So the thing is, people want to be justified in what they're doing already, because they're not going to be forced to have to reinvest in new systems. So it's easier for them to just accept that what they're doing is right. But for me, for my system, it is built upon eradicating old paradigms. So of course I'm going to do this. Of course I'm going to tear things down. This is what functional patterns is about. But fortunately, I'm not running under the differential advantage perspective of telling people, well, you know what? My lamps are inferior and the lamps of the person next door are 10 times better, but I'm going to lie to you and just tell you that my lamps are still good for the sake of making money. My lamps actually are the better lamps, and I'm telling you point blank that the lamps on the other side of the street are not the better lamps. I'm saying this from an honest perspective. I've known about the crookedness that is involved in the economic system for quite some time. I've understood how money corrupts things, and it corrupts people, and that the establishment as a whole is corrupted, and that's what's affected my decision making all this time. So I'm not, when I take the approach that I do, of course I tell people that they're wrong by what they do, but I say that so then if people want me to conduct research, it requires money for me to do that, because universities are not jumping all over this. I want to hire more scientists. I want to hire more people on that can help us quantify how we can make people healthier. I want to help humanity. And in order for me to do that, I need more resources. I need to make more money. I don't need more money so I can buy 20 mansions all over the world and then I just live an excessive lifestyle. That's not my perspective. That's not what anybody's perspective is at Functional Patterns. We want to have a society that coexists with one another, that's not picking away at one another. And that's my ultimate intention behind Functional Patterns. But in order for us to do that, at some point we need to acknowledge that we do live in a fraudulent society, and that the systems that are sprouted from this fraudulent society are destroying everything in its path. That our system is based upon inefficiency, and that it's a patchwork system, and that we need to eradicate this patchwork system so we can move on into new frontiers and actually begin to solve problems in the way that we're supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, two-part response to you. It's like as if we were, I don't know, 10 of us on a deserted island, and somebody had the competence and the knowledge to know how to make water, and the other 9 of us did not, and this person would not share it with us unless we brought him, I don't know, a couple coconuts every day. I wonder how long that person would stay, in good condition. You know what I mean? The other 9 would not have that, right? It would happen differently. If we didn't share the knowledge. But when you incorporate where we are, it's the idea of we don't share our knowledge, that somebody may invent something. You can even go into psychology, from fitness to psychology to physics. When we have a theory, the idea of open source, imagine what we could do and build if we shared and admitted. You said the differential. Well, in psychology that differential diagnosis is a mandatory, but it's overlooked. So everyone that invents their system or has a theory like I do, I even say it in the book, we build off the backs of many and we incorporate, and we have to be willing to tear down as fast as we build up. And here's what I'm going to bring to the forefront too, is what you at FP personally don't post a lot about that I have to inform people about that you may not have thought of. Is you talked about confidence and arrogance, etc. the other day. It was a cool little share. But what people don't understand is when you're a scientist, as you are, Naudi, and all the other FP scientists, if you are doing your experiments, people don't realize how many times you're wrong in the lab, that you make a hypothesis and it's fucking wrong. And then you're wrong, and then you're wrong. And so all people see you do is post about how we're all fucking right. We're amazing. And the truth is, because you're scientists, you're probably wrong most of the time.
Oh yeah, artists, my assertions become destroyed. Even when I start measuring things, when I looked at a force plate analysis, I started seeing that at the point the foot strikes, there's three-dimensional forces there, that the horizontal force vector does need to be there, but the vertical force vector needs to also be inclined with that. So what do? I go into my laboratory. I have my boy Ashley Kramer, who came down to visit me once again here in Seattle to train with me, and I cover for the vertical force vectors during the session, and boom, I account for that. I put him on the treadmill. He runs 2 miles an hour faster than he did the last time he saw me late summer. So again, wow. I adapt to the information because I'm wrong. And it stings my ego. It sucks. I'm like, ooh, I've been telling people, horizontal force vectors, and it is horizontal force vectors. They need to be there. But at some point, the vertical needs to meet the horizontal, and I'm now accounting for that, and I'm adjusting. I said for the longest time that the pelvis should stay fixed in space, and in many situations it should, but there's times where the pelvis needs to turn and the femurs all still need to be in the sagittal plane. Some things I'm still right about, but there's many times when I'm wrong about things, and I have to abandon ship on many of the ideals that I once carried. And many of the times is that I have to accept a lot of the things that the Gray Cooks and things like that I've been talking about, the Tom Myers. I have to bend to a lot of the things that these people say. With that said, I don't think they fully understand why things are happening the way that they are, and most importantly, I don't think they even know how to work. I don't think they even understand how to work off the information that they have. But nonetheless, I am wrong on so many occasions. When I trained a fighter, his name was Mike Gentili a few years back. His first fight was against Kelvin Gastelum. You know who he is, right? That was his first fight ever. Damn. He decided to say, you know what, I'm gonna skip the amateurs and go straight to the pros. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. I'm gonna go through it with you because I'm your coach and I'm gonna support you, but I don't think you should just skip the amateurs and go straight to the pros. But he wanted to make money, and they put him on the main event of a fight with Kelvin Gastelum of all people. And we didn't know who Kelvin Gastelum was. Nobody knew who he was, but now everybody who's in the MMA scene knows who Kelvin Gastelum is. He's a freaking monster. And yeah, Mike wound up suffering a TKO loss. And prior to that, I was having him do all the three-dimensional movements while he still had his hyperextension in his lumbar clearly present there, while he still had his thoracic kyphosis. And I was like, you know what? I need to sit back and reevaluate my position. His face was grotesquely swollen, and I was living with the guy. We were living in the same apartment, and I got to see that grotesque swelling slowly dwindle down 3 weeks after he had that brutal TKO loss. I got to see him after the fight on an IV, where it looked like he was about to die afterwards because his body was so deteriorated after that fight. And you're sitting there watching this while the rest of his coaches are like, whatever, get the hell out of my face. I, as a caring person, which is kind of what I am sitting there watching this guy. And I mean, I cried for like the next month after looking at what the fuck happened to this guy. And I told myself, this is never going to happen again. I'm going to prepare myself for one. I'm never going to allow a fighter to take that path. I'm going to make sure that they have the right coaches. And furthermore, I got to make sure that I address their muscular dysfunctions before they can even go into a fight like that. And if they're not prepared, I am not going to help them at all with what's going on. So I haven't been slapped in the face, Adam. I have been kicked in the nuts, knocked the fuck out. I have been destroyed by reality time after time after time again, and I've had to make adjustments because, my God, what I was doing was completely wrong in so many ways.
Well, that exercise in humility, for one. Do you know how many trainers, aka Ronda's trainer, when the fight's over, take no responsibility for their actions and why something didn't happen? But you in a moment there have to exercise that humility. That's a side of Naudi that a lot of motherfuckers don't see. But that, the cognitive dissonance, somebody will have to look this up for me, but there was a group of researchers that were researching the idea of a cognitive dissonance, this denial that goes further, and they looked into a flood that happened in Mississippi, and to where they had purposely forewarned people within, I think it was a 7-mile radius, that the river was going to flood when the storm got here. And if you're in the 7 miles, you need to leave. And people at the 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 mile all left. But as you got closer to the 1 mile, more and more people actually stayed. And a few actually died within a few days at the 1 mile fucking radius. I mean, because the idea that their house would flood and all of their things would be gone was so tragic or too tough to think about, that it was so bad that you were willing to die because of it. And it sounds that way with kind of fitness, as we, look, those people experience positive things at that house. They have great memories there, so they can't think about losing it. So when people look at yoga and they hear what you say, and they look at powerlifting, whatever, CrossFit, and they have great memories that maybe have saved their life at moments and gave them physiological changes and physical changes and mental changes, and they can't let go of that reward that they got and begin to see longer term, and be it the people at the 7 mile radius. So people at that 1 mile, they just can't see past those immediate rewards they may have received at once, and begin to look farther on, play the chess game 14, 15, 16 moves out, not 2 or 3.
Yep, absolutely, man. And it just the problem, I think, is that people jump to conclusions on things. So one thing I find, I ran a class here recently, and one of my students was saying that smoking marijuana, he was told by somebody else that smoking marijuana disengages the sartorius muscle.
The what?
It's a hip flexor, I believe, internal hip rotator. I forgot what the hell it does. I think it's an external hip rotator, I believe, and external femoral rotator, proximal to the hip. And so he's saying that this lady was making the assertion that marijuana disengages the sartorius, and I couldn't help but roll my eyes, going, "What are you talking about? Like, you have to be kidding me! How can you say
what motion? What motion does that hip help you do?
It like kind of like brings your knee to your chest, and then it turns your leg out. I believe. I haven't looked at the anatomy books. I have to go back to what specific.
Hold up. So what does it do? Hold on. Let me try something here. Hold up. You watching? Watch this. And I got to bring my knee up to my chest and roll my leg out. Well, bitch, you wrong. Just did it. How about that?
But they could talk about that there's maybe that it's the muscles around that sartorius. I'm just playing devil's advocate for you, Adam. It's the muscles around the sartorius.
Well, I can tell you this. I smoke a nice little bowl before Muay Thai, and I don't seem to have a problem kneeing fucking anything.
Bro, I will tell you point blank that I disagree with it. I've smoked myself from time to time, and I think my sartorius seems to function pretty well. I think you guys have seen. If anything, I've improved my movement from the times that I've gotten. If I've waked and baked, and I've done it in the morning. I don't do it all the time, but I do it enough to where it's like I've tested with it, and I still use it. Marijuana is a fantastic tool. It's a biohack. That's what marijuana is. It's biohacking. But what I do is, if I do that beforehand, then I grab a club bell. There's movements I've created while I've been high with club bells. Important movements, ridiculously important movements while I was high. And I'm assuming that the sartorius was connected to that. So at what point can we say, okay, it's like if people have, they've talked about how water responds to music. That if you play a certain type of music, it makes the water erratic and toxic or whatever. And so they say, okay, well, if you're listening to that kind of music, you're going to become toxic, so you need to listen to some stupid symphony. Well, I'll tell you this much. If I played, I can make a bet that if I played heavy metal for my dog, and you could think, well, you know what, dogs don't like heavy metal. What if every time I played heavy metal for my dog, let's say I played Sad But True from Metallica. I play Sad But True, just a real heavy riff, and then every time I play that song, I feed my dog some kibble. Every single time. I guarantee you, after a certain period of time, my dog is going to begin to wag his tail anytime he hears that Sad But True song or any type of grunge guitar. So what does that tell you? You could make an association to anything. So because she may have found if there was an inhibition of the sartorius muscle through some kind of what do they call it, applied kinesiology, that she found that there was an inhibition of the sartorius between marijuana smokers. How does she know that that's just not associative relative to the kind of stimuli that that person's had? I could tell you right now that most people's muscles don't work well anyway. If all I have to do is put them on a treadmill, and I can be like, look, this muscle doesn't work. None of your muscles work well. Look at how your lumbar compresses every single time that you take a step. That has nothing to do with the marijuana, and it has everything to do with a whole assortment of other associations that you're not making, that you're supposed to be making while you're running. But it has nothing to do with marijuana. It has everything to do with your associative memory. That's what it comes down to. So the problem is that people jump to conclusions, Adam. They just jump to a conclusion. They say, well, but they never take into account this is so relative to this particular type of stimuli. So let's say if you do something like applied kinesiology, which many physiotherapists do, chiropractors do this type of stuff, where they'll have you laying on a table, they'll put their hand on, they'll start rubbing a scar that you have on your body, and they test the muscle, and then they show that it's weak, and then they stop touching it or something, and then they test your leg, and then it feels strong. Well, they're doing that while you're lying down. So they're making these revelations while you're laying down. They're not doing it in an applied sense. So how do you know that that isolated muscle activation even correlates to integrated muscle activity? The truth is nobody knows, because nobody's ever tested it outside of FP. We are the only guys that are showcasing. If anybody shows results from this day forth, Adam, and they show before and afters on their gait cycle, you can thank functional patterns for that, because nobody ever did it before. I can make the assumption that any results that are shown from this day forward of people improving their scoliosis in a dynamic fashion are the byproduct of them stealing functional patterns, or not stealing, just using functional patterns concepts and employing them in their training. This is fact, because prior to 2013, nobody was showing any kinds of before and afters. If nobody still is showing them, but eventually FP is going to become a copied system by everybody, and and what's going to be magical about it is many people are going to start putting these before and afters and not citing where they actually got the inspiration and where they actually got the information to make these kinds of revelations happen. But the key point is, Adam, is I don't jump to conclusions. I test things. And all I say is this works in this particular circumstance, but it probably doesn't work in 1,000 other circumstances. And this is fundamentally why I get results, because I understand that my assertions are very limited to the stimulus that I'm placing in that particular moment. But you can't say that a stimuli applies to all contexts. You can only say that this applies to this context. And for me, I'm trying to find out the stimuli with the human body that applies to every context imaginable, whether that's jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, baseball, football, basketball, soccer, hockey, whatever. I'm trying to find the stimulation that the body needs that applies to all spectrums of reality. But nobody's ever cared to do that. Nobody's even thought that far, because it's just too damn hard to do that, man.
I love you.
Thank you very much.
Well, man, I
notice that I'm not dropping any F-bombs either, Adam. It's just for the people that say, I don't like how Naudi comes off with his language. He just comes off as very unprofessional. I dare you people to watch these videos, and especially this podcast, and try and disagree with me. I really, really do. People avoid these podcasts like if they had some kind of, flesh-eating bacteria, Adam. These podcasts should have way more. As many people call me arrogant and whatnot, are willing to call me arrogant and say that I'm unfair by the way that I go about my things. They could just as easily as they are willing to want to write down their critique of me, they could take the time of the day to go to your Cognitive Rampage podcast that we've done together, and they could look at my perceptions on reality, and then they could make a better assertion as to what's going on. But people aren't trying to make better assertions. What they're trying to do is justify what they're currently doing, and not accept that they're incompetent by what they're doing and that they're hurting people. They're being very, very facetious by their actions, and I dare them to watch this podcast where I've barely dropped any profanities, any obscenities. I've particularly thrown them in tactically throughout this podcast. And I've put forth data in a very, very professional manner here, and I sincerely hope that more people they become fair in their judgments of me and functional patterns and my critiques of other systems by watching this podcast specifically here, and then drawing their conclusions after they've watched this specific podcast.
That's a functional rampage. Well, it's why I think, I don't know, you and I need to just do a podcast together, like functional rampage. But I think I'm the perfect one to enter it, because look, I tell everybody, Learn to
Absolutely.
question self. As question me, question Naudi all you want to, but if you're questioning that much, at least be
Well,
questioning what
Adam,
you
Adam,
believe.
let me tell you a little story. So I did and you could see it. I told you before that I wouldn't do podcasts with anybody else because most people wouldn't get it, and I was like, you know what? Maybe that's just an indoctrination that I have that most people aren't going to get it, and maybe I just need to communicate my points, and that pretty much be it. And you know what? Let me try another one. This guy kept hounding me to do a podcast with him. He hit me up like on 10 different occasions. It's Primal Edge. You guys can check it out, and you'll see the podcast that we have. And what I was dealing with was a guy that was like, you know what, society is a sham, and so what I have to do is move away and run away from society and get away from it so I can save myself. But the problem is that if we have a nuclear war, no amount of escapism is going to save you from there being radiation in the water and you drinking that radiation if you're living out in Ecuador somewhere where this guy is living at. So from my perceptions, analyzing his reality, he's running away from the problem. I'm tackling the problem head on, living in the city. I mean, eventually I plan on moving out of the city, but before I move out into the city, I want to make sure I do my part to trying to mend society to some degree or the other. I'm not running from the problem. I want to solve the problem. So I get into this whole thing about talking about the singularity that Ray Kurzweil has been talking about for quite some time, that he's been predicting, along with many other predictions that he's made. And so many of the things that he's been talking about are completely coming true, from virtual reality simulators to nanochips that will be going in your blood, to nanochips that will be regulating your hormones and the functions of your nervous system. These things are all coming. And so he's clearly afraid of all this stuff because he sells supplements, and these supplements are all natural. They're natural supplements. They're natural proteins and all this stuff. And he stands to make money off of all this stuff, and it enables him to keep making a living on his podcast, through his podcast, on his YouTube channel, and keep living out in the forest while he does nothing to actually really help humanity. My perception is that we can't turn back from this technological revolution that's happening. We already are robots, and our clear design in this universe is to make more technology. Robots already. We're just going to make more advanced robots than ourselves. This is a process of evolution. Whether we like it or not, it's what it is. Of course, if you look at all the EMF and everything, there's going to be a brain transplant happening here very soon. In the next year, there will be a brain transplant done by the end of 2017. What are the implications of that? Eventually, you may actually have your brain on a robot body. At that point, what's really the nature of consciousness if you can transplant your brain onto a robot? This has already been indicated many years ago through scientific research, through scientific studies. They have shown studies with monkeys where the monkeys were not able to distinguish the difference between their own hand moving and then actually moving through their brain a ball on a screen. They could not distinguish the different functions between the two. So our attachment to our physical bodies is irrelevant. So technology is going to enable us to essentially live forever, and continue to keep exploring the complexity of this reality. And this guy wants no part to apparently do with that kind of stuff. And so I tried his podcast out, Adam, and I could just see me attacking his cognitive dissonances, his inability to accept the nature of where reality is going. We are not turning back from where we're at. We have to find a way to fuse technology with biology and with nature. This is the path that we have to go on. There is no ways around it. This is what's going to happen, and people are pushing it to that direction. And if we don't figure it out, then we're probably going to see some kind of a nuclear holocaust. Something along those lines is going to happen. We need to figure this out. We need to figure out our values, and we need to find out how to fuse our culture with technology. And so I tried other podcasts, Adam, and it didn't work out. And guess what? I'm probably not going to do any more podcasts, Adam, because very few people get where I'm coming from. That notion of cognitive dissonance doesn't equate to what's going on with reality. Of course, I understand where these primal people are coming from, where they're like, you know what, we have to connect with nature and all this stuff. Of course, I understand all that kind of crap. I understand that our health, biologically speaking, at this given moment relates to us being connected to nature. I understand that, but within time, technology is going to figure all that out. EMF and blue light is not going to be a problem when we have engineers that manufacture things that negate the stress effects of blue light and EMF. when we find a way to make a symbiosis with our physiology through technology, then all this EMF that's going on is not going to do anything to our physiology. So really, you going out to nature is just simply accounting for our inability to extrapolate the complexities of EMF influencing our physiology. It has nothing to do with EMF being bad. It has everything to do with us not being able to adjust to the EMF. But if technology is capable of making that adjustment, then EMF will no longer damage our physiology.
Yeah, I have to apply a filter. Fuck, I love that fucking Rampage, bro. The filter I have to apply for people on that is scientists sometimes think in different minds, people in different ways, and obviously you may not pick up on it. I'm talking like you're not here, and Naudi actually sees the world. I'm going to tell you, and more of we're a continuing species, and so rather than you do think for yourself in the now, which is why the functional patterns stuff, but in that Rampage you're looking at us as a total species. You're looking at the human being 1,000 years from now as being equal to the human being today, and scientists tend to look at us like that. Researchers tend to look, authors tend to look at us at a 50,000-foot view as an evolving species total, and many of us that get hit with a cognitive dissonance by anything that Naudi may have just said, I'd encourage you to maybe step out of your present, even out of your kids' future, go further beyond that, 1,000 years into this. And the more we hold on to the resistance of change, the more that I think we may hold ourselves back. And I think we will look back, Naudi, at this, because the people that live the generation that they are never fucking know it, right? It's going to be 1,000 years from now, and they're going to look back at our generation and call us something. And we're not going to know, and we're never going to know what that is. But accepting of that part is such an odd place, isn't it, man? That I'm the pro nature guy. I'm the guy that I'd rather live out there. But I promise you, when it's raining or the bears coming, I'm glad I fucking have a house.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? And unless you've really been in nature around a fucking bear or something, then you don't fucking get it. So,
exactly.
The truth, and it's a beautiful feeling. At the same time, it is primal and scary. So we are that generation, whatever the hell they'll call us, that is in that transition. And you talked of immortality, and that will scare the bejesus, excuse the pun, out of people. And look into something. Look up a documentary called The Immortalist about Aubrey de Grey. I actually write about him in my book too. And watch that documentary. Watch his debate with the guy at I think it's is it Cambridge? No, I think I can't remember where it takes place. But these are places, these are things, man. Step out of that present. Naudi, brother, I love it when we come on. I knew we were going to talk yoga, and then all of a sudden, man, we're talking about this transition to an evolution. I mean, we're not the monkey, we're not the halfway between, we're not the any of that. I mean, why wouldn't we think that it would change beyond this? But people's cognitive dissonance of what we are, who we are, even psychologically of who I am, or that's just who I am, can cause havoc on any growth or change that this fucking humanity will ever see.
Yep, and we're there, bro. I'm watching Kathy training somebody right now. She just put this guy through a standing neutral, and he felt the difference in his muscle activation, and you just saw his eyes just go.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
It's
That's
happening,
what happens.
Bro. It's happening.
You need to be filming those aha moments. See, in therapy, we call it the aha moment, where I'm working, and then the client goes, oh shit, and then they go, fuck you, Adam, and then I go, well, you got it. You need to, like you caught me on this beginning of this podcast, get that on film where that person does the movement or connects the logic and goes, oh fuck.
Yep, but you know what the problem is, Adam?
I'm sorry, I cursed. We just lost like 100 viewers because of their perception that words are bad. I somehow am a bad person. Please question who told you what a fucking bad word is. What is a bad word? And if they're bad words, why do they change every 30 fucking years?
Yeah, exactly. All right? There are bad words that we use, like freedom is a bad word. That's a very bad word. If you start talking about things like freedom, it's like saying, oh yeah, I make my choices in reality. It's like, oh no, all the conditioning prior to you making that decision has nothing to do with your choice. Come on.
That's right.
You think your brain is not, you think you're not a robot? You are a robot. Let's be real here. And you've been programmed a particular way by the environment. You're just a robot following orders to your past most of the time. And you have a small amount of change. All the change that you can make is just something like this.
I feel like we're I feel like we're freestyling back and forth like philosophy and shit, man. I think
That's all the decisions that we can make. What do you have? What can you do right now? What can you do right
whew,
now? Can you move your pinky? Can you rotate your T-spine? What mechanisms influence you to rotate your T-spine? You're not changing any. You don't have the choice in anything. You have no choice. You have no choice to change your perspectives. Your environment either allows you to change your perspectives based upon the people that you've met in your life and the stimulus that's in the environment, or you don't change at all. But you have no freedom. And I think that's what it ultimately boils down to, is people accepting that their perceptions on reality are a bit limited, and that they need to change their perspectives on reality, that they need to abandon ship with much of what they've been doing, because all it's doing at the end of the day is holding themselves back, and as a mechanism of themselves being held back, they're holding back other people from trying to evolve as well. So if you don't have, like with me, with regard to going back to yoga and tearing it down, unless you have clear results to refute what I'm saying, you should probably just stay quiet, because all you're doing is hindering the growth of other people. And of course, most of those people are who do go upon that. They do go on that when they make the decision of wanting to debate and say that I'm being unfair with what I say. It's because they have something to defend most of the time. So it's not that they're doing it really to help people. They're really just trying to do it to help themselves and help their own perception. The help how they come off to everyone else in their environment. That's really all they're trying to do. And but
and
if
and
if
since
they can.
uh and since people want solutions nowadays, we'll just give it to them like this, man. That and with awareness comes change, and you can't fix what you don't know is broken. And after this podcast, they can unlearn what they now know.
Yep. And even beyond that, bro, I think we can't assume that we know the right path.
Mm,
We can't assume that we know where we're going. The
beautiful.
second you think that you're on the right path is the second that you have done the biggest, committed the biggest human sin that you can, and
So
that's and that's pr-
how do you apply that to FP, bro?
proje-
That because I love that. That's humility you're talking about. You know what I mean? Well, you know
so
what? We've already talked about it. All the times you've been
of
wrong,
course,
all the times you question
of
yourself.
course,
You know what? We covered that. So you know what? For all the haters that may listen to you just say that and then question, I'm telling you, because if I felt it, the response is going to be, oh, okay. So if you think you're on the right path at FP, you're questioning it. And so to fill in those comments before they pop up on YouTube, we just covered it. He questions it every fucking day inside the damn lab.
of course. What I say is hypothesize, but don't project. You get what
Bam.
I'm saying by that?
Yeah.
Hypothesize, but do not project. I don't project anything onto my environment. I hypothesize relative to what I've seen in the past, and I make my decisions based upon the inferences that I've made in the past. But that is subject to change relative to a changing environment. So of course I'm cynical about people right now, but in 100 years, when people finally put two and two together, I no longer have to be cynical because we figured it out. So my cynicism at that point needs to be destroyed about society. That my cynical outlooks on things do not need to be there, because we at some point are going to evolve into an intelligent society, and I don't need to be cynical anymore. I can look at my fellow man as my brother and not my enemy. And so I only hypothesize. I don't project things. I don't project that I need to be cynical. All I do is hypothesize. I extrapolate what's happening in the environment. I calculate what's going to happen based upon what's happened in the past. But if I continue to be wrong and people prove me wrong, then at the end of the day, if I need to drop my cynicism, then I will drop my cynicism towards society. But it's because I'm always estimating. I'm estimating what's going on. I'm scientifically deducing what's going on. And I think every human being needs to operate under that same perception. When we operate under that perception, it opens the doors to all sorts of new creative possibilities and some amazing things that may happen in our lifetime. So we may begin to see some great changes on things. We can't assume what the world is going to look like. All we can do is ponder what it will look like, but we don't know what it's going to be. We really don't know what it's going to be.
Mm. Oh man, for those that left the game early, you know how people walk out in the third or fourth quarter like it's over. I started in this podcast 20 minutes ago, and it just got really fucking good at the end for the last 20. And I want to bring up this last point with you, Naudi, man, is even for me, I'm going to bring up, since you're bringing up all this humility shit, I'm going to bring up something that I say a lot that I'm starting to question of myself too, and trying to find a deeper psychological level to it. And all right, I'm going to probably get some shit for it, but whatever.
It's all good.
The idea that we all, you see it a lot, right? We just need love each other, right? You see this posting, you see that, I say it, I love you to you and everybody else, this kind of thing. And I forgot how good the movie Good Will Hunting is and how much I relate to fucking Will. And, in that, Robin Williams, the psychologist guy, he brings up a warning and he says, we need different definitions and different kinds of love because people have killed for love, they've died for love, they murdered for love, they've done so much for love, and we have to go deeper. And it blew
Yep.
me. It reminded me to that, to where it becomes so easy just to say, if we just love each other, we'll be fine. Well,
Exactly.
there's a lot of religions and cultures that love just themselves and their brothers and not the other skin color. And it caused all kinds of terrible things. And the definition of love needs to be a lot more specific and stop throwing generalizations at the wall, hoping some shit sticks, man. And
Well, I got a story for you, Adam. This is actually a really interesting one. So, I
so
get into
my point is,
yeah,
hold on. My point is, if people out there, like I'm questioning myself there too, so I'm kind of walking through that idea of when I say, we just got to love each other and stuff. It's hard for me to question that cognitive dissonance because for so long, and it helped me out there. If you guys go through it, if you're pondering that idea of it, because I'm such a fucking walking conundrum now because I'm this Gemini for real. I'm this rationalist, logical, cognitive guy, but I'm this hopeless, romantic, fucking spiritual. I want to believe in something greater and connected. You know what I mean? It's
me too.
fucking. Ugh.
Me too. I want to feel the same way, bro. But before we can mystify reality, we have to demystify it, and that's my perception at least. And so I try and demystify it, take out the magic from it, and just say, okay, let's try and mechanically orient ourselves, figure things out, feed every human being on the planet, have clean air, clean water, clean food, and everybody have shelter, everybody have the basic things taken care of, and then we can look at the mystical nature of reality. Let's get our foundations down before we start getting into the crazy aspects of life. But
Damn, dog,
with regard,
we're almost one and the same, bro. God, you do it
yeah,
in wow. Because in
yep,
my book, brother, like I stayed away from the. I love the way you explain that, man. I'm so gonna steal that shit later. Is let's
absolutely, use it, bro. If
demystify
it
before we
helps,
put in a mystify. Well, I wrote that book because there's so much mystifying psychology that I said, look, let's just start with what we do know. You know what I mean? And
exactly,
you
yes,
did
sir.
for fitness. Fuck.
Yep,
Maybe that's how
yes.
we handle it. Is that how we cope with it, bro? Is that how we like cope with that chaos of the perfect symmetry of the opposite equals of the yin yang? Is that how we pop from circle to circle in the yin yang, if you will? Because I feel like I live on the island of the yin and the yang, that little other color circle in the mass.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know how the hell we go. I mean, I think I do it mechanically, bro. I think there's many ways that you can do. You can. I think everything comes down to trying to align with nature in some particular way. Everybody has their own route. I just think the mechanics, which is the way I go about it. I seem to find that it's the most important facet of it all, just based upon the testing that I do and the psychological. When I see the way that the cognitive relates to the biomechanical, it makes it very, very difficult for me not to take the mechanical aspect seriously. But again, we have to abandon ship on we have to be willing to abandon ship on everything that we believe. And that notion love, let me break down the story, because this was a very, very fascinating, you see how much I battle online. I don't just battle online aimlessly. People are like, why do you waste your time arguing with people? It's like, I don't waste my time, guys. I go on there because it's like, even though it gets intense sometimes, I learn from it. And one time I talked to this guy who was he was a big Jack Cruz follower and all this stuff, and he insisted he was some kind of he was a kind of like a self-proclaimed genius kind of thing, even though nobody knows who he is and he has no results to back up his claims. So there's plenty of those people. And so I started talking about love, and he's like, love is simply just an oxytocin response. Holds their baby, they secrete high levels of oxytocin. When you bond with another person or your dog, you secrete heavy amounts of oxytocin. If you take Molly, ecstasy, then you secrete high levels of oxytocin, and you get that feel-good love hormone. And then I was like, oh, okay. So you're saying that oxytocin is the love hormone? He's like, yeah, that's what it is. That's what's objective about it. I'm like, okay, what about a situation where a man is raping a woman? What hormone do you think the man raping the woman is secreting? Have we tested that? Would there be a potential that the raper is secreting oxytocin? Is a rapist, is a stalker secreting oxytocin every time that he
Whoa.
obsesses over a woman when he follows her around?
Fuck.
It's
Yeah,
not. It's
it's
not that
quick.
clear.
That's pretty
It's
quick to an assumption. It's like if we operate like plants, like the acacia tree, if we already know we put off pheromones and shit like that. So why wouldn't we operate on some chemical level like that? That's right. That's jumping to quite the conclusion because we get what you're saying by rapists is
many
gonna
have.
it's
Many have jumped to the oxytocin is the love hormone, and this is the love thing. And I'm like, well, what about rapists? What do they
yeah.
feel? What about child
Well,
molesters?
well,
Is that
I get
loving
that.
what
And
they do to kids? I mean, we
right,
have.
I'm trying to tone you down on that blow for people, bro, because they're trying to swallow that shit right now. And but you're
Well, I want them to eat that pill. I want them to swallow that bitter ass pill
it's
because they
look,
need to, man.
it's rarely me trying to hold up the front door. Somebody else is kicking in, all right. I'm usually kicking that bitch in with you. You know what I mean? So my your point is justified on a lot of ends. Is because rewards are rewards physiologically, psychologically, be them bad, be them good. It's why people get in abusive relationships and stay there. It may sound like they're crazy, but they stay there that long because there is a reward for themselves that they get in it by doing it, just like that. And so that's it, man. We come into some assumptions pretty quick, don't we?
Yeah, it is, bro. I think people, they assume, this is what I learned from Jacques Fresco, man. I went back to started to watch Jacques Fresco interviews. My God, that guy he's unbelievable. Honestly, I'm at around age 22 or 23 to have got to kind of like know, no, it was maybe 24, 25, at a pivotal age when I was developing my manhood, that I got to hear his kind of advice that he would give just based upon what was available on YouTube at the time. It just transformed the way that I am as a person. And it's like where he pretty much leaves it as that, everything is relative. You can't say something is so because you're only projecting on things relative to your perceptions with your receptors, with your sensors. Essentially, we all have sensors, and we all sense things in a slightly different way. And just the way he goes about things really has helped me out, and it's enabled me to overcome my own pitfalls of myself and just relinquishing myself from all my attachments to the society and to myself and the values that were sprouted from it. Just my willingness to open up to more things is I think is a great byproduct of what I've learned from that guy. But yeah, man, like I said, I think for people they need to they need to hypothesize and not projecting as to what they think life is, what it should be, and whether they're doing things right or not. Everybody projects that they're doing the right thing, but what they haven't been doing is actually hypothesizing. They haven't been scientifically deducing, and everybody is capable of scientific thought. Everybody does it on a daily basis. We all look at the weather reports, right? We all pump air in our tires of our cars. If we own a car, we all pump air onto the tires of our bicycles if we ride a bike, and we say, you know what, that feels a little bit flat because I'm not pushing, because they're calculating, okay, that this bike riding does not feel the way that it's supposed to, so I need to make, everybody's calculating, everybody's being scientific. They just don't know how they're being scientific every minute of the day. That's why I say everyone is a scientist. Scientists and other people are not. We are all scientists, and we are all employing the scientific method every day of the year.
Yeah, man. Fuck, we go off, dog. Man, I dig it. I gotta
That's a
run,
good one,
man.
right?
Yeah, dude, that
Me
was
too.
fucking.
I got a meeting with my trainers here in a little bit, so we'll have to get back together again.
I'm gonna start every podcast after the first 5 minutes. I'm gonna go, well, man, I appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna end it 5 minutes into a podcast because after I said that, we fucking went off, man.
Well,
So
hell yeah,
because we're rats
man.
in a maze, I'll repeat behavior.
Yep. Well, what's good, man, is that these podcasts are good for the people in the FP community and the tribe of change community. When they start saying, well, what's the validity behind this tribe of change thing and this functional pattern stuff, at least they have some of these podcasts to reference to be like, okay, well, if you feel so certain that these people are crazy, go ahead and watch these podcasts and then refute what they're saying. I dare you. Go ahead and do that. And when they do that, then they begin to see that you and myself, specifically myself, because people tend to find me to be unreasonable to certain things. At least there's some things to usher in a little bit of doubt in their mindset and help them along the path of actually discovering what they're supposed to be doing in this life, and not understanding what they're projecting and not
There it is.
and what they're hypothesizing.
Yeah, I love it, man. I tell people my usual kick in the front door statement is there is no truth. And if people respond to that as a, oh yeah, there is, I just simply say, okay, if you ride a roller coaster and you tell me it wasn't scary and I ride it and I say it was, who's telling the truth?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And here's the key in that psychology statement, though. Always make sure that you tell them that they rolled the roller coaster and it wasn't scary and you rode it and it was. It's hilarious. When you switch it and say that it was scary to them and it wasn't for you, they don't even hear your response at the end, because by the time you're saying who's telling the truth, they're already telling you, I ain't scared of shit.
No, if you told that to me, Adam, I'd be like, no, Adam, I actually am the scared one because I fucking hate roller coasters. I hate them like with a passion. So if you were like, yeah, you were the afraid one, you were the one that was afraid, and I said I was the one that was unafraid, I'd be like, no, I agree with you. I hate roller coasters. I can't stand that shit. Maybe it's a fear I need to get over.
No, look, I'll ride them. I don't really have. It's the heights and the high spinning shit my body can't do. But for me, it's not about the fear of falling or dying. It's because I know the people that fucking put that shit together and maintenance it every day. Okay, so
that's for me. I was like, man, Carney. I don't know if the Carney code is up to the scientific code, bro. That's why for me, I'm like, I don't know if I trust these cats, bro. Straight up, I don't know if I can.
The Carney code.
Yeah. Haven't you ever seen The Simpsons where they talk about the Carney code?
No,
bro,
man,
The
that's
Simpsons,
funny.
come on. Oh, bro, The Simpsons is probably one of my favorite shows of all time. But yeah, Homer Simpson was a carny at some point. And then he realized he thought it was utopia, that the carnival was a utopia, and then he realized that the people at the carnival were a bunch of douchebags. And one of them, somebody told him about the Carney code, and then he's like, "But what about the Carney code?" And they're like, "Yeah, sorry, bro, that's some bullshit. The Carney code doesn't exist." It was good, bro. That's a very very good show.
I see them. Look, they'll design it and build it. It'll be beautiful. But I know they're paying that dude $15.50 a fucking hour who's mad as fuck, who can't afford his insurance, who's probably got a lower back injury, whose wife is leaving him, who fucking kids don't even appreciate him. And one day, I'm sorry, he's not the guy or girl that usually goes like, hold on, let me double check that bolt for you real quick.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's an assumption, because there's some millionaires walking around hating their fucking life too. Don't get me wrong. There's some beautiful.
That's a hypothesis, Adam. That is not an assumption. That is a hypothesis. Yeah. You're calculating things very well there. From my perspective, you're calculating things very well there. So I would I hypothesize things in the exact same way. I'm like, how happy is this person today? Maybe he didn't screw that bolt in tight enough on purpose. And all he may have to do is just get fired, and then he gets to vent out his rage on these stupid carnival goers.
Right. Or maybe he twisted it the wrong way a few times on a few bolts on purpose just because he's fucking pissed.
I've thought about that too many times, and that's part of what does scare the living shit out of me when it comes to. The funny thing is, my boy Bruno from Brazil one time was going to go to Six Flags. And he's like, yeah, my girlfriend bought me tickets. We're going to go to Six Flags. I'm like, bro, you really trust those people? He's like, yeah, bro, nothing ever happens. And literally, like 2-3 days later, a couple people had died at Six Flags, I believe, from falling off of it because the thing came off the rails, and there's people that died and got severely injured. Then he went and he got a refund for his tickets after that.
You got to ask yourself, right? Like Tony Wright brings up with his theory is like, how intelligent are we that we, for what, 2 minutes of, all right, that was fun. I know it's very low risk, even like skydiving, but we risk a couple minutes for like something that would, like a bad YouTube video. You know what I mean? Like a bad YouTube video.
Adam, we can't say that, bro. Wim Hof method, all it is just it's a spike of your adrenal glands.
It's flow. I get you. It's flow.
But no, it could be I'm just saying, as a scientist, I could say there could be an advantage to carnival rides. It's a way of jump starting the metabolism. I'm not bullshitting. If you took most people from,
I'm laughing, bro, because here's a true psychology thing. For all of you that go on a first date, forget the dinner, forget anything else. There's actually research. Look this shit up. Go on a date with the girl or the guy or same whatever, and go on roller coasters or a water park or something, or do something scary, and you will create a connection between you two because people connect in shared fears. And so when people adrenaline raises together, and then you face this kind of fear and you spike those adrenalines together, people are more apt to fall in love when you do that.
That's crazy, man. That makes so much sense. But yeah,
Yeah,
there you go. It's like you take two imbalanced people, and they might become physiologically attached to each other because they had a period where their blood sugar probably regulated after the spike, where their hormones, their serotonin probably regulated after the spike. They establish a feel-good moment for once in their life, and it's through that spike through their adrenals. And now you end up getting people who are, who end up falling in love because they hit a point of actual physiological functionality, and it was because maybe there was adrenal spike that came from the roller coaster.
dude, you
I
know,
don't. It's a theory.
I won't
You
talk
never know,
shit.
Adam. I might fucking build a roller coaster inside my facility here just to see if I can get that spike out of a person's adrenal glands, and then see if it drops down. They get some sleep after that, and then they wake up and they feel great. You
Well,
never know, bro.
do a 2-seater ride and call it the first date and see how many people ride it and fall in love later.
That'd be a good experiment. I'll tell you what. Oh, actually, no. You said there was experiments. There already was,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they already do it. Now, look, everyone's got their McDonald's because I may talk about that shit, but I'm the first guy to jump in and go spear fishing. I'm the first guy to go surfing in New Smyrna Beach, the shark capital of the world, where I spend every other day during the summer. So, I mean, jump out of your airplanes, do your shit. I'm surfing and swimming with sharks, so fuck it, right?
Why not? I mean, what the hell? What do you got to lose? Well, I guess a connection to this reality, but it's not like this is that much of a harmonious reality anyway. So just go,
I just, I,
just go for it.
I just feel like I have a chance on a surfboard in the water with the shark, I guess, and a spear gun, riding a lockdown in some metal contraption. I just don't feel like I have much choice or control. It's pretty much over if that little caboose decides to go off.
Fuck. Yeah, that'd be fucking. That's too much. That's my hypothesis is that you know what I based upon how I calculate things is not probably a fear that I want to overcome when I think of things like that. But who knows? You never know in the future, man.
Well, let me screw the end of this podcast up with a shitty pun because we ran that bitch off the rails.
Yep. All right, brother.
Oh,
Well, I'm gonna get going. I got my guys over here. I gotta teach them some shit and organize things in Seattle for the first time and get things going over here. So,
all right, brother.
yeah. Brother, take care, man.
Later, brother.
Take care, man. Bye.
Hope y'all enjoyed that one. Holy shit. Sorry about that really bad pun. I laughed, okay? I laughed. Made me laugh. We did take that bitch off the rails, though. Fuck, we yoga everywhere. I did. I tried to, I had to get off because I'm already late now, so I just kind of said, fuck it. Yeah. Holy shit. I even got to digest that, man. Sometimes I get at the end of a podcast, like Dr. Jack Cruz's podcast, Tony Wright's podcast, a couple other podcasts. If you watch how I end the podcast, it's fucking awkward because I'm, even with Steven Kotler, I think my brain's just kind of zapped and I go like, oh, bye. Thank you for a podcast. Fun. Bye. Because there's so many new synopses, little catching on and shit. And man, that one's gonna ring true. I may actually have to go back and listen to that shit just to hear a couple Naudi's functional rampages. Those were holy shit, man. I mean, at least to ponder. I try to cushion Naudi's blows. You know what I mean? I'm which is fucking weird for me. I guess that challenges me, teaches me almost indirectly because I usually kick in the front door psychology approach, and sometimes I find myself holding the door up while this 5'2" badass is kicking the door underneath me. But we need scientists like that out there. I love how he said we're all scientists. I think I added to that with some post a little while ago. We're all scientists in our own mad experiment, trying to prove ourselves right. And we're just biased, willing to question anything becomes hard, but shout out to the FP forefront people, that someone's out there questioning those things, that someone's out there pushing it. And I know it's hard out there if you're a practitioner in yoga or anything that, has provided a life for you, has provided income, has fed you. I know that's hard because it does those things, but that idea of questioning that, evolve that, if truly helping your clients the best you can is that, but then do that. But I know we have to question our own practices, right? Our own things. That's why I even question the love stuff I talk about. But, you know, wow. I love that. I love starting the new year like that. A good cerebral kickoff like that. That was good. You will see Dr. Gabor Mate next week, the 11th. He's coming on. Let's see, Dan Cleveland, the founder of the ayahuasca retreat, one of the first ones over in Peru. He is coming on the 3rd week of January. Let's see. I have a couple more. Forgetting you. I'm sorry. I told you my brain's it's squirrely. But second edition of the Cognitive Rampage will be out in January. Ignore the 11th post that I have there. We've added some more. I'm actually written an additional chapter. So it was the 19th chapter to this one, updating some things. Like I said, with Naudi on the podcast, I edited the exercise sections, changed that to movement, actually quoted Naudi, mentioned a few things. But anyway, there's some cool things, new cover, new stuff like that. If you want to help, here's what I was going to say. If you're listening to this still, maybe there's a reason. If you bought a book already, please, 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 please email me a picture of like you or something with the book, kind of proving that shit or something, because I have a gift for you that I want to send to you. Yeah, it's pretty neat. So if you bought the first edition of this edition right here, I'm pointing at it on the YouTube. If you bought that edition already, please email me with like a picture of your face and some shit. I don't know. Prove it's you somehow that you bought the book, because I can't do it for everybody. All right. But I will do it for everyone that purchased the book. I have something to give you that I think you'll like. So please email me, cognitiverampagepodcast@gmail. Send that picture or something. I really want to give you something. Yeah. If you bought this book, the first edition. So the second edition and the audio book will be out as well. I do read the audio book myself and throw a couple extras in there. Stuff that comes to me randomly. I squirrel off a little bit, but I bring you back in. You know when. I'll keep you guided. But anyway, Dollar Mental Health Club will be out in February. I'm not going to launch DMHC in January. Just too much going on in January between the second edition of the book, the audio book I'm closing up, and some other things, but just too much. So I pushed DMHC to February because we're also doing the hiring in January. If you're interested in being a mental trainer with Dollar Mental Health Club, also email me your resume at dollarmentalhealthclub@gmail. You'll email us. There's a few of us. There's 4 of us on the board, if you will. But email us that. Don't worry about if you're licensed or anything else like that, okay? Just email if you're interested in being a mental trainer, and I'll let you know. Lastly, go to drinkmycoat.com. You see it back here in the back, Nectar of the Gods. They got concentrate too. It's wonderful. Go to drinkmycoat. Alfred, I love you. I really hope your 2017 is doing it, man. I hope, what, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to go ahead. Here's an ass out of you, and I can't say me but I'm going to assume if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably already living that cognitive rampage your own. So it's kind of odd telling you, I hope you're doing it good finally. More than likely, you've been kicking motherfucking ass for a while if you found this podcast, or you've just started kicking ass and you're coming out the gate swinging. So I won't tell you. I hope it's different than you're 16. And right on cue, lawnmower comes by. That's the end of the podcast. They're always fucking mowing in the suburbs, man. It never stops. Every day. They just keep mowing. Look at that. Mowing and mowing. It's insanity. Why have grass if you keep cutting it, knowing it's going to keep growing? And you keep doing it over and over every weekend. And we want bigger yards and bigger greens and bigger bushes to cut and take care of that will continue to grow. And most of your life, you will spend your weekends out front cutting the grass that you knew would grow when you bought it. And the more of it you bought, and you cut it every fucking weekend. And then you put shit on it during the week to make it grow faster. And then you cut it again at the same time every fucking Sunday. Or you pay people to cut it at fucked up hours like this. Holy shit, man. Yeah, I didn't expect that. I love you guys. I really do. On some level, I don't like love you guys and like in the name of love, I'll kill you, like love you, right? I'm trying to be more specific. Like, I care about your well-being. I hope you succeed at what you want. I hope you smile. I hope you help someone today. I hope you're walking around looking for that bully that's picking on somebody weaker, that's being mean. I hope you are that too, because I'm fucking that guy. And we need more of that dude. We need more of that girl. Walk around, protect those around you. Don't just look out for self. You know what I mean? If you see a weaker person getting fucked with, help them. If you see somebody getting beat up or bullied, help them. Don't stand there and pull your fucking phone out and try to make some world star video for some views, you piece of shit. If somebody's getting fucked up and you're standing there, you're just as guilty. I don't know why I ended the podcast in such an angry tangent, but I thought about that. Seriously. I mean, damn, you know? Like that dude that hit that old lady on Target. You've seen that old lady got right hooked. Let me be that motherfucker in line when you do some shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? You know, somebody do something. If you see something, you know, if you see somebody weaker than you, old person or a kid being taken advantage of in some way like that, step the fuck up. Do some shit. But also take care of you. Hope you're taking care of you. Hope you're living a cognitive rampage. I'm out. Teed up. See you soon.